I sat in CEO Patricia Hawthorne's glass office at TechFlow Solutions, nervously clutching my performance review folder. After 8 years of dedication, 60-hour weeks, and single-handedly developing the company's breakthrough inventory management system, I finally gathered courage to request a modest 10% salary increase. Patricia's response shattered my world, explosive laughter, followed by the crushing words, "At 38, maybe it's time to consider early retirement instead of chasing unrealistic expectations." The humiliation burned as Patricia dismissed me with a wave, leaving me questioning everything I believed about loyalty and hard work. My hands trembled as I walked back to my cubicle, Patricia's laughter still echoing in my ears. The fluorescent lights overhead seemed harsher somehow, casting everything in an unforgiving glare. I forced myself to sit down at my workstation, staring blankly at the dual monitors displaying the very code that had revolutionized our inventory tracking system. "Bernie, you okay?" asked Lucy Martinez, my cubicle neighbor, who worked in quality assurance. Her concerned voice barely registered as I replayed Patricia's dismissive words over and over. "Fine," I managed, though my voice cracked slightly. "Just tired." Lucy didn't look convinced, but she returned to her work without pressing further. I appreciated her sensitivity. The open office layout meant privacy was non-existent, and the last thing I needed was the entire development team witnessing my humiliation. During my lunch break, I wandered aimlessly through the break room, unable to focus on eating the turkey sandwich I'd packed that morning. The familiar chatter of my colleagues felt distant and muted, as if I were underwater. That's when I overheard Jake Morrison's booming voice from the corner table where he sat with 3 other developers. 25% increase, can you believe it?" Jake was saying, his tone dripping with self-satisfaction. Patricia said my innovative approach to the logistics module really impressed the board. Guess all those late nights finally paid off. My blood turned to ice. Jake Morrison, who had joined TechFlow barely 2 years ago, was celebrating a 25% raise while I'd been laughed out of Patricia's office for requesting 10%. The injustice hit me like a physical blow. "What exactly did you do for the logistics module?" asked Thomas Chen from accounting, genuine curiosity in his voice. Jake launched into a detailed explanation that made my stomach churn. He was describing my code architecture, my algorithms, my innovative database structuring techniques. Every breakthrough he claimed as his own had originated from my late-night programming sessions and countless hours of debugging. The key insight, Jake continued puffing up with pride, was realizing we could optimize inventory tracking by implementing a recursive tree structure that adapts to seasonal demand patterns. Revolutionary stuff. Revolutionary stuff that I had developed 18 months ago and documented extensively in my project files. I had presented those exact concepts to the team during our quarterly review meetings where Jake had sat in the back row supposedly taking notes on implementation strategies. The realization hit me like a sledgehammer. Jake hadn't just benefited from my work. He had stolen it outright and presented it as his own innovation to the board. And Patricia, who had witnessed my original presentations, had not only allowed this plagiarism, but had rewarded it with a massive salary increase. I left the break room without touching my sandwich, my mind racing with the implications. Back at my desk, I pulled up the company salary database that I had administrative access to as part of my senior developer privileges. What I found there shattered any remaining illusions I had about fair compensation at TechFlow. The gender pay gap was staggering. Male developers with similar experience levels earned an average of 22% more than their female counterparts. Jake's new salary now exceeded mine by 37%, despite his significantly shorter tenure and inferior technical contributions. But the deepest cut came when I researched Patricia's own background. I found interviews she had given to tech publications over the past year, positioning herself as a champion of women in technology. In one particularly galling piece for Tech Leadership Today, she had declared, "We must create environments where talented women can thrive without artificial barriers limiting their potential." The hypocrisy was breathtaking. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table in my small apartment surrounded by printouts of my original code documentation project timelines and patent application drafts. My laptop screen glowed with my employment contract from 8 years ago, a document I hadn't examined closely in years. As I read through the legal language, one section caught my attention. Due to my unique transition from independent consultant to full-time employee, I had retained partial intellectual property rights to innovations I developed using my own foundational algorithms. The clause had seemed insignificant at the time, but now it represented something powerful. I owned pieces of the very code that was keeping TechFlow competitive in an increasingly crowded market. Patricia's cruel suggestion about early retirement echoed in my mind, but now it carried different implications. Maybe it was time to explore retirement from TechFlow, but not in the way she had intended. Maybe it was time to discover what my skills were truly worth in a marketplace that valued innovation over loyalty. The decision crystallized as I closed my laptop that night. If Patricia viewed me as dispensable, I would show her just how wrong she was. The next morning, I arrived at the office with a new sense of purpose. Instead of diving immediately into my coding tasks, I spent the first hour researching my market value with a systematic approach I typically reserved for debugging complex algorithms. I started with salary comparison websites entering my experience level, technical skills, and geographic location. The results were eye-opening. Senior software engineers with my qualifications in our metropolitan area commanded salaries ranging from $120,000 to $180,000 annually. My current $85,000 suddenly seemed insulting rather than merely disappointing. During my lunch break, I received an unexpected phone call from a number I didn't recognize. "Hello, Bernadette. This is Sarah Chen from Elite Tech Recruiting. I hope you don't mind me calling, but I've been trying to reach you for several months about an exciting opportunity." My heart skipped. "I'm sorry I haven't received any messages from your firm." "That's strange," Sarah replied, her voice carrying genuine confusion. "I've been sending emails to your work address since last spring. Let me double-check my records here. Yes, I have bernadette.collins@techflow.com. Is that correct?" "That's my work email, but I never received anything from you." A cold suspicion began forming in my mind. "Well, that explains the radio silence. I was starting to think you weren't interested. The thing is, I have a client who's been specifically asking about your availability for months. Quantum Dynamics has been eager to discuss a senior position with you." Quantum Dynamics, TechFlow's biggest competitor and the company that had been steadily gaining market share in our sector. The irony wasn't lost on me that they had been pursuing me while my own CEO was laughing at my raise request. "I'd be very interested in learning more," I said, keeping my voice low despite being in my car in the parking garage. "Wonderful. Here's what I can tell you. Marcus Rivera, their CEO, has been following your work through industry publications and conference presentations. He's particularly impressed with your inventory optimization algorithms. They're looking for someone to lead their next generation of logistics software, and your name keeps coming up in their strategic planning meetings." My pulse quickened. What kind of position are we talking about? Senior development lead with potential for department head responsibilities. The compensation would be significantly higher than industry standard. They're prepared to be very competitive to get the right person. We arranged to meet the following day at a coffee shop downtown, far from TechFlow's office. As I hung up, pieces began falling into place. Someone had been intercepting my emails, and I had a strong suspicion about who that might be. Back at my desk, I decided to do some investigative work. Our email system had administrative logs that I could access, and what I found there confirmed my worst fears. Amanda Fuller, Patricia's executive assistant, had been systematically filtering and deleting emails from recruitment firms that mentioned my name. The deletion log showed dozens of messages over the past 6 months, all from executive search firms and technology companies. The pattern was clear and deliberate. Patricia had been actively sabotaging my opportunities for advancement keeping me trapped at TechFlow with below-market compensation while preventing me from discovering my true value elsewhere. My investigation deepened as I explored TechFlow's financial situation through publicly available records and internal budget documents I had access to through my senior status. What I discovered painted a troubling picture of a company in decline. Our client retention rate had dropped 18% over the past year. Three major contracts had been lost to competitors, with clients citing superior technology and support as their reasons for switching. The only bright spot in our portfolio was the inventory management system I had developed, which was generating 63% of our recurring revenue. The cruel irony became crystal clear. Patricia's dismissive attitude toward my compensation request came at a time when my contributions were literally keeping the company afloat. She was desperately trying to maintain profitability by underpaying the very person whose innovations were preventing total collapse. That evening, I met Sarah Chen at a quiet coffee shop in the Arts District, far from anyone who might recognize me from TechFlow. Sarah was a polished woman in her 40s with an immediately trustworthy demeanor and an impressive knowledge of the technology sector. "Bernadette, I'm so glad we finally connected," she said as we settled into a corner booth. "Marcus Rivera has been asking about you specifically for 6 months. Quantum Dynamics has been analyzing the competitive landscape, and your work keeps coming up as a differentiating factor for TechFlow." "What exactly does he know about my contributions?" "More than you might expect. Industry insiders talk, and your inventory optimization system has been getting attention at conferences and in trade publications. Marcus has been studying TechFlow's competitive advantages, and your algorithms consistently emerge as their primary technological edge." Sarah leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Between you and me, Quantum Dynamics has been reverse engineering your approach, trying to understand how you achieved such remarkable efficiency improvements. They've concluded that recruiting you would be more effective than trying to replicate your work independently." The validation was intoxicating after years and years of feeling undervalued at TechFlow. "What kind of opportunity are we discussing?" "Marcus is prepared to offer a starting salary of $250,000 with performance bonuses that could push total compensation over $300,000 annually. He's also talking about equity options and a substantial signing bonus." The numbers were almost incomprehensible. Triple my current salary with growth potential that dwarfed anything TechFlow could offer. "There's something else," Sarah continued. "Marcus specifically wants to build a new department around innovation in logistics technology. He's not just hiring you as another developer, he wants you to lead strategic development and build a team that can revolutionize how their clients approach inventory management." I left the coffee shop that evening with my head spinning. The contrast between Patricia's dismissive laughter and Marcus Rivera's eager pursuit highlighted just how badly I had been undervalued at TechFlow. But more than that, I was beginning to understand the leverage I actually possessed. My algorithms weren't just valuable, they were irreplaceable. And if I owned partial intellectual property rights to them, Patricia's assumption about my dispensability was about to prove catastrophically wrong. The following week, I threw myself into preparation with the same methodical intensity I brought to complex programming challenges. Every lunch break became a research session, every evening, a strategy planning meeting with myself. I needed to understand exactly what assets I controlled and how to leverage them effectively. My first priority was documenting my intellectual property claims. I spent hours reviewing the code I had written, tracing the development history of each major algorithm. The inventory optimization system had evolved through hundreds of iterations, and I had meticulously documented each breakthrough in my personal development notes. The evidence was overwhelming. Every major innovation could be traced back to my original research and implementation. Jake Morrison's supposedly revolutionary insights were carbon copies of work I had completed and presented months before his arrival at the company. On Thursday morning, I was running late and decided to take a shortcut through the executive corridor to reach the main elevator bank. As I passed Patricia's office suite, I heard voices from within, and noticed her door was slightly ajar. I slowed my pace, not intending to eavesdrop, but Patricia's raised voice carried clearly into the hallway. Morrison, I need you to focus on reverse engineering Collins's core algorithms. Once we understand how she built those efficiency models, we can eliminate her position entirely. My blood turned to ice. I stopped walking, entirely pressing myself against the wall beside her doorframe. I'm making good progress, Jake's voice responded. Her code architecture is more sophisticated than I initially thought, but I think I can create a simplified version that accomplishes the same goals. Give me another month, and we can save the company $85,000 annually in salary expenses. Perfect. The board has been pressuring me to reduce overhead costs. Eliminating Collins while maintaining her system functionality would be a significant win. Make sure you understand every component before we move forward. We cannot afford any disruption to client services. I felt sick to my stomach. Patricia wasn't just undervaluing my contributions. She was actively planning to steal my work and eliminate my position. The betrayal was complete and calculated. What should I tell her about the project collaboration she's been requesting? Jake asked. Keep stalling. The less she knows about your reverse engineering work, the better. Once you've replicated her core functions, we'll restructure the development team and position the changes as efficiency improvements. I forced myself to keep walking before my presence was discovered, but my hands were shaking as I reached the elevator. The conversation had revealed Patricia's true strategy: use Jake to steal my innovations, then discard me as a cost-saving measure. That afternoon, I contacted Diana Walsh, a lawyer friend from college who specialized in employment and intellectual property law. We met at her downtown office after work hours, where I explained my situation in detail. Bernadette, based on what you're telling me, you have very strong grounds for intellectual property claims, Diana said after reviewing my documentation. The consulting to employee transition clause in your contract is actually quite unusual and favorable. Most companies require complete assignment of IP rights, but your agreement specifically preserves your ownership of innovations based on your pre-existing methodologies. What does that mean practically? It means TechFlow can use your algorithms as long as you're employed there, but they can't continue using them if you leave unless they negotiate a licensing agreement. And if they're planning to terminate you while keeping the benefits of your work, that could constitute both breach of contract and theft of intellectual property. Diana leaned back in her chair, studying my documentation more carefully. There's something else here. If this Morrison fellow is creating derivative works based on your copyrighted algorithms, that's copyright infringement regardless of whether the company authorized it. You could seek injunctive relief to prevent further use of your work. The legal framework was more favorable than I had hoped, but Diana cautioned me about timing. You need to be strategic about how you proceed. If you're planning to leave TechFlow, you should document everything thoroughly and be prepared to act quickly once you make your move. Companies like this often try to claim trade secret protections or argue that work was done for hire even when the contracts say otherwise. Over the weekend, I compiled a comprehensive portfolio of evidence: original algorithm designs, development timelines, email correspondence showing my initiative on key innovations, and documentation proving Jake's plagiarism. I also researched quantum dynamics, extensively familiarizing myself with their business model, recent acquisitions, and strategic direction. Monday morning brought an unexpected development. I arrived at work to find an email from Patricia's assistant requesting that I attend a meeting Friday afternoon to discuss my career development and future role at TechFlow. The corporate euphemisms were transparent, and the timing aligned perfectly with what I had overheard in Patricia's office. They were planning to terminate me Friday afternoon, probably expecting me to be caught completely off guard. Instead, I now had a clear timeline for executing my own strategy. I called Sarah Chen and requested an expedited interview with Marcus Rivera for Thursday afternoon. Then, I spent the remainder of the week quietly preparing for my transition, copying personal files to external drives, and ensuring that all evidence of my intellectual property claims was secured outside of TechFlow's systems. The irony was delicious. While Patricia and Jake plotted my professional demise, I was preparing to demonstrate just how valuable my contributions really were. They had no idea that their cost cutting strategy was about to become their worst nightmare. By Thursday morning, I was ready. My interview with Quantum Dynamics would either validate my worth or confirm that I was deluding myself about my value. Either way, I would have answers before Patricia's planned ambush the following afternoon. The anticipation was almost unbearable, but I had learned something crucial during this process. Loyalty and hard work meant nothing without the courage to recognize and defend your own value. Patricia's dismissive laughter had inadvertently become the catalyst for discovering just how much power I actually possessed. Friday's meeting would be very different than Patricia expected. Thursday afternoon arrived with crisp autumn air that seemed to energize my resolve as I drove to Quantum Dynamics headquarters across town. Their building was sleek and modern, a stark contrast to TechFlow's aging office complex. The lobby featured impressive displays of their technology solutions, and I felt a surge of excitement about potentially joining an organization that celebrated innovation rather than exploiting it. Marcus Rivera greeted me personally in the lobby, a gesture that immediately set him apart from Patricia's corporate formality. He was younger than I had expected, probably in his early 40s, with an energetic demeanor and genuine warmth that put me at ease. Bernadette, it's such a pleasure to finally meet you, he said as we shook hands. I've been following your work for quite some time. He led me to a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. Sarah Chen was there along with two other executives, Linda Rodriguez, VP of Technology Development, and Robert Kim, Chief Technical Officer. Before we dive into specifics, Marcus began, I want you to understand why we've been so eager to connect with you. Your inventory optimization algorithms have created a significant competitive advantage for TechFlow, and frankly, we've been studying your approach extensively. Industry insiders consider your work revolutionary, Linda added. The efficiency improvements you've achieved aren't just incremental, they represent a fundamental breakthrough in logistics technology. Robert leaned forward, his enthusiasm evident. We've been analyzing TechFlow's market performance, and there's a direct correlation between their client retention and the implementation of your inventory system. Companies using your algorithms show 37% better inventory turnover and 23% reduction in carrying costs compared to traditional approaches. The validation was overwhelming. After years of feeling undervalued at TechFlow, hearing industry leaders discuss my work with such respect and understanding was emotionally transformative. We understand you're currently in a senior developer role, Marcus continued, but we see much greater potential. We want to offer you a position as head of innovation development, leading a new department focused entirely on advanced logistics solutions. What would that involve? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. You would have complete autonomy to develop next-generation algorithms and systems, Linda explained. We're prepared to provide substantial resources, a dedicated team, and equity participation in the innovations you create. Marcus slid a folder across the table. Here's our formal offer. Starting salary of $280,000 annually with performance bonuses that could add another $50,000. We're also offering a $50,000 signing bonus and equity options that vest over 4 years. I opened the folder with trembling hands. The compensation package was beyond anything I had imagined possible. More than triple my current salary with growth potential that could change my entire financial future. There's something else, Robert said. We've been tracking TechFlow's recent performance, and they're struggling significantly. They've lost 3 major contracts in the past 8 months, and their revenue has declined 22% year over year. Marcus nodded grimly. The only thing keeping them competitive is your inventory system. Without continued innovation in that area, they're facing serious market challenges. Industry analysts are predicting that TechFlow will either need to innovate aggressively or face acquisition within the next 18 months, Linda added. Their current trajectory isn't sustainable. The information hit me like lightning. While Patricia had been dismissing my requests for fair compensation, The company's survival was literally dependent on my continued contributions. Her arrogance wasn't just personally insulting, it was strategically catastrophic. We need to be direct about something, Marcus said. We've been developing our own logistics solutions, but we haven't been able to replicate the elegant efficiency of your algorithms. Rather than continue trying to reverse engineer your work, we decided the smart approach was recruiting you directly. What's your timeline for making a decision? Sarah asked. I need to discuss this with my current employer, I said carefully, not revealing Patricia's planned termination meeting. Could you give me until Monday? Absolutely, Marcus replied. Take all the time you need. This is a significant decision, and we want you to feel completely confident about joining our team. As the meeting concluded, Marcus walked me back to the lobby personally. Bernadette, I want you to know that this offer reflects our genuine belief in your potential. We're not just hiring a developer, we're investing in a leader who can shape the future of logistics technology. The drive back to my apartment was surreal. Less than a week ago, Patricia had laughed at my request for a modest raise. Now I held an offer that would transform my career and financial security in ways I had never dared imagine. That evening, I sat in my living room with Marcus's offer letter calculating the life-changing implications. The salary increase alone would allow me to pay off my student loans within 2 years and start building real wealth for the first time in my adult life. The equity options represented potential for even greater long-term financial growth. But beyond the money, Quantum Dynamics was offering something TechFlow had never provided: respect for my contributions and investment in my professional growth. They saw me as a strategic asset set worth building an entire department around, not a cost center to be minimized and eventually eliminated. The contrast with Patricia's treatment was stark and painful. While she had been planning my termination, industry leaders had been recognizing my innovations as game-changing breakthroughs. While she had dismissed my worth with cruel laughter, competitors had been strategizing around recruiting me specifically. I spent the evening reviewing Quantum Dynamics' financial statements and strategic plans. They were a growing company with strong leadership, innovative culture, and resources to support ambitious projects. Everything I had learned suggested they were positioning themselves to dominate the logistics technology sector over the next decade. By Friday morning, my decision was clear. I would accept Marcus Rivera's offer, but first, I had a confrontation to navigate with Patricia. Her planned termination meeting at 3 p.m. would become something entirely different: my resignation meeting, delivered with complete knowledge of my true market value and legal protections. Patricia had no idea that her cost-cutting strategy was about to become her worst nightmare. Jake Morrison's plagiarism efforts would prove worthless when I took my intellectual property to their biggest competitor. The loyal, undervalued employee they planned to discard was about to become the strategic advantage their rivals needed to dominate the market. The anticipation was intoxicating. After 8 years of underappreciation, I was finally ready to show TechFlow exactly what they were losing. Friday morning arrived with crystalline clarity, both meteorologically and mentally. I dressed carefully in my best professional attire, not for Patricia's benefit, but because I wanted to feel completely confident during what would be our final business interaction. The navy blazer and matching skirt represented armor for the battle ahead. I arrived at the office earlier than usual, using the extra time to make final preparations. First, I secured copies of all my intellectual property documentation on multiple external drives. Then I systematically removed personal items from my desk, boxing them discreetly so as not to alert my colleagues to the impending drama. Around 10:30, I overheard Jake Morrison on a phone call that confirmed every suspicion I had harbored about Patricia's treachery. His cubicle was positioned just around the corner from mine, and his naturally loud voice carried clearly through the thin partition walls. "Yeah, Mom, it's finally happening today," Jake was saying, his excitement barely contained. "Patricia is going to clean house this afternoon, and I'll be moving into Bernie's position with her salary. All that reverse engineering work is about to pay off big time." My breath caught in my throat. The casual cruelty of his statement was staggering. He was celebrating my professional destruction as if it were a holiday bonus, completely oblivious to the ethical implications of his plagiarism and the personal devastation he assumed it would cause me. Honestly, I never understood why they kept her around so long. Jake continued. Sure, she wrote some decent code, but nothing I can't replicate with better efficiency. Patricia says the company can save almost 90,000 annually by streamlining the development team. The conversation continued with Jake describing his excitement about the salary increase and his plans for renovating the algorithms I had spent years perfecting. He spoke about my innovations as if they were obsolete relics he was generously agreeing to modernize. The final insult came when he mentioned the internal job posting. They already listed her position on the company portal with my name as the provisional candidate. The job description basically copies all her previous innovation proposals, but positions them as new strategic initiatives. Pretty clever way to transition the work without admitting they're just replacing her with someone cheaper. I forced myself to remain calm as rage boiled inside me. Patricia hadn't just planned my termination. She had orchestrated a complete theft of my professional contributions, positioning Jake's plagiarism as innovative leadership while erasing my role entirely. During lunch, I made the call that would change everything. Marcus, this is Bernadette Collins. I've made my decision about your offer. Wonderful, I hope we'll be welcoming you to the Quantum Dynamics team. You will. I accept your terms completely, and I'm prepared to start Monday morning. That's fantastic news, Marcus replied, his enthusiasm evident even through the phone. I'll have HR expedite all the paperwork today so we can finalize everything over the weekend. This is going to be transformative for our development strategy. There's one more thing, I added. I may need legal support regarding intellectual property issues with my current employer. They've been using my algorithms without proper licensing agreements, and I want to ensure clean transitions. Absolutely. Our legal team has extensive experience with IP transitions. We'll make sure everything is handled properly and protectively. After ending the call, I contacted Diana Walsh to arrange legal documentation for Monday morning. She had prepared cease and desist letters and licensing proposals that would give TechFlow options for continuing to use my algorithms while respecting my intellectual property rights. The afternoon crawled by with agonizing slowness. I watched the clock tick toward 3 p.m., knowing that Patricia expected to ambush me with termination papers while I prepared to deliver the shock of her professional life. The power dynamic was about to reverse completely, and she had no idea what was coming. At 2:45, I gathered my documentation portfolio and walked toward Patricia's office suite. Amanda Fuller, her executive assistant, looked up with what appeared to be genuine sympathy. Bernadette, she's ready for you, Amanda said softly. I'm really sorry about this. The comment confirmed that Amanda knew about the planned termination, probably having typed the paperwork herself. I wondered if she also knew about the intercepted emails and her role in sabotaging my career opportunities. Thank you, Amanda. This should be an interesting conversation. I knocked on Patricia's door and entered when she called out. She was seated behind her massive oak desk, termination paperwork arranged in neat piles, her expression a mixture of false sympathy and barely concealed satisfaction. Bernadette, please sit down. I'm afraid we need to discuss some difficult changes affecting your position here at TechFlow. I settled into the chair across from her desk, placing my portfolio on my lap and maintaining steady eye contact. I'm very interested to hear what you have to say, Patricia. She launched into a carefully rehearsed speech about budget pressures, strategic restructuring, and the unfortunate necessity of eliminating certain positions. The performance was polished and professional, delivered with practiced corporate empathy that failed to mask her underlying satisfaction. These decisions are never easy, Patricia continued, but we've concluded that your role has become redundant with our current staffing structure. We're prepared to offer a generous severance package in recognition of your years of service. I let her finish the entire termination presentation, watching her confidence grow as she assumed I was absorbing the news with resigned acceptance. She had no idea that I was memorizing every word for future reference. I appreciate you explaining the company's position, I said when she finally paused. Now I'd like to share some information that might change your perspective on this conversation. Patricia's expression shifted slightly confusion, replacing confidence. Actually, Patricia, I won't be needing that severance package. I'm resigning from TechFlow effective immediately to accept a department head position at Quantum Dynamics, with nearly triple my current compensation. The transformation in Patricia's face was extraordinary. Confusion gave way to shock, then to panic, as the implications of my statement began registering. That's impossible, she stammered. You can't just walk away from your responsibilities here. I'm not walking away from my responsibilities, I replied calmly. I'm taking them with me along with the intellectual property rights you seem to have forgotten I own. I opened my portfolio and placed copies of my legal documentation on her desk. These papers detail my ownership claims to the algorithms that generate 63% of TechFlow's recurring revenue. My lawyer has prepared licensing agreements that would allow you to continue using my innovations, but only under terms that respect my intellectual property rights. Patricia's face had turned ashen. You can't do this. Those algorithms were developed while you were employed here. Actually, I can, and the legal framework is quite clear. My consulting to employee transition preserved my IP rights to innovations based on my pre-existing methodologies. Every major algorithm can be traced back to work I own before joining TechFlow. I leaned forward slightly. There's something else you should know. I'm aware that Jake Morrison has been plagiarizing my work with your authorization, preparing to steal my contributions after my termination. That constitutes copyright infringement and possibly criminal theft of intellectual property. Patricia was speechless, her carefully planned ambush completely reversed. I'm prepared to license my existing algorithms to TechFlow for a substantial monthly fee, preventing immediate disruption to your client services. However, all future innovations belong exclusively to Quantum Dynamics. The meeting was no longer a termination. It had become a negotiation where Patricia held no cards and faced potential legal catastrophe. The power had shifted completely, and Patricia's cruel laughter from the week before seemed like a distant memory from someone else's life. Patricia sat frozen behind her desk. The termination paperwork now looked absurd in the context of my revelation. Her carefully orchestrated plan had collapsed, entirely replaced by a crisis that threatened the company's survival. This is corporate blackmail, she said finally, her voice lacking conviction. No, Patricia, this is intellectual property law. I own these algorithms and I have the legal right to determine how they're used. The fact that TechFlow has been benefiting from my work without proper compensation or recognition doesn't give you permanent claim to it. I pulled out additional documentation from my portfolio. Here are the development timelines showing my original creation dates for each major algorithm. Here are email records proving I presented these innovations months before Jake Morrison was even hired. And here are patent application drafts that establish my priority claims. Patricia's hands trembled as she reviewed the evidence. The legal implications were becoming clear, and her strategic miscalculation was now obvious. Furthermore, I continued, I have recordings of Jake's phone conversations where he admits to reverse engineering my work, and I overheard your conversation planning to eliminate my position while keeping my contributions. That's actionable evidence of conspiracy to commit intellectual property theft. Recordings? Patricia's voice cracked slightly. Our office building has been updating security systems, including audio monitoring in common areas. Jake's cubicle calls have been inadvertently captured, and your office meetings near the open door have also been documented. My lawyer has reviewed everything and confirmed it's admissible evidence. This wasn't entirely true. I had only heard Jake's calls directly, not recorded them, but Patricia's panic was preventing her from thinking clearly enough to challenge my claims. What exactly are you proposing? She asked, resignation creeping into her voice. Option 1, TechFlow can license my existing algorithms for $25,000 monthly, with annual increases tied to your revenue growth from clients using my systems. This allows you to maintain current operations while respecting my intellectual property rights. Patricia's eyes widened at the licensing fee, over 300,000 annually, far exceeding my previous salary. Option 2, I exercise my intellectual property rights, immediately requiring you to cease using my algorithms within 30 days. Given that these systems generate most of your recurring revenue, this would likely force bankruptcy within 6 months. You can't be serious about destroying the entire company. I'm not destroying anything, Patricia. I'm protecting my intellectual property after discovering your plan to steal it systematically. You created this situation by treating my contributions as disposable while secretly planning to eliminate me and claim my work through Jake's plagiarism. I leaned back in my chair, letting the gravity of her situation sink in completely. There's a third option, though. It may be too late for this. You could negotiate a licensing agreement that includes equity compensation for my past contributions, recognizing that my innovations save tech flow from market irrelevance. We could structure a deal that protects both your immediate operations and my long-term rights. Patricia was calculating rapidly, probably trying to determine which option would be least catastrophic for her leadership position. The board doesn't know about any of this yet, she said quietly. No, but they will by Monday morning. My lawyer is prepared to file formal notices regarding intellectual property claims and potential litigation for theft of trade secrets. The board will need to understand why their primary revenue generator is suddenly at legal risk. The conversation was interrupted by a knock on Patricia's door. Amanda Fuller entered hesitantly. I'm sorry to interrupt, but Marcus Rivera from Quantum Dynamics is on line 3. He says it's urgent regarding a business development matter. Patricia and I exchanged glances. The timing was either coincidental or Marcus was making a strategic move to increase pressure on tech flow. Take a message, Patricia said tersely. He specifically asked to speak with either you or Bernadette Collins regarding algorithm licensing discussions. The blood drained from Patricia's face. Marcus wasn't just calling randomly. He was following up on our intellectual property conversations, probably preparing to formalize licensing negotiations that would protect Quantum Dynamics' use of my innovations. I'll take the call, I said, reaching for Patricia's phone. Bernadette, this is Marcus. I wanted to follow up on our discussion about IP transitions. Our legal team has some questions about licensing arrangements for your current algorithms. Perfect timing, Marcus. I'm actually in a meeting with Patricia Hawthorne right now discussing exactly those issues. Would you like to join the conversation? Patricia shook her head frantically, but I had already activated the speakerphone. Patricia, this is Marcus Rivera. I understand Bernadette has been discussing her intellectual property situation with you. Quantum Dynamics is prepared to negotiate fair licensing terms that protect everyone's interests while ensuring continued innovation development. Patricia found her voice, though it sounded strained. Mr. Rivera, I'm not sure this is the appropriate forum for these discussions. Actually, I think it's perfect, Marcus replied smoothly. Bernadette will be leading our innovation department starting Monday, and we want to ensure a clean transition that respects existing legal obligations. We're prepared to structure licensing agreements that allow TechFlow to continue benefiting from her previous work while acknowledging her ownership rights. The conversation continued for 15 minutes, with Marcus outlining potential licensing structures that would protect TechFlow's immediate needs while establishing clear frameworks for ongoing intellectual property relationships. His professional tone and thorough understanding of the legal issues made it clear that Quantum Dynamics had prepared extensively for this transition. When the call ended, Patricia sat in stunned silence. You orchestrated all of this, she said finally. No, Patricia, you orchestrated this when you decided to underpay, undervalue, and ultimately eliminate the person whose innovations were keeping your company competitive. I simply responded to your actions by discovering my actual market value and protecting my legal rights. I stood up, gathering my documentation portfolio. Jake Morrison's position should be terminated immediately. His plagiarism efforts constitute intellectual property theft, and continuing to employ him creates additional legal liability for TechFlow. I'll expect your decision on licensing terms by Monday morning. I walked toward the door, then turned back for one final comment. By the way, Patricia, thank you for the advice about early retirement. As it turns out, you were absolutely right. It was time for someone to retire from this professional relationship. I just don't think you expected it to be TechFlow retiring from access to my innovations. The irony was delicious. Patricia's cruel dismissal had triggered a chain of events that would cost TechFlow hundreds of thousands annually while transforming my career beyond anything I had previously imagined possible. As I left her office, I heard Patricia frantically calling an emergency board meeting. The woman who had laughed at my modest raise request was about to explain to her superiors why their primary competitive advantage had just walked out the door and taken their future profitability with it. Justice was beginning to feel very sweet indeed. 6 months later, I stood in the floor-to-ceiling windows of my corner office at Quantum Dynamics, watching the sunrise paint the city skyline in brilliant oranges and golds. The view was spectacular, but it paled in comparison to the satisfaction of building something meaningful with people who valued innovation over exploitation. My department had grown from my initial vision to a 12-person team of brilliant engineers and developers, each recruited based on their potential rather than their willingness to accept substandard compensation. The Innovation Development Division had become Quantum Dynamics' fastest growing segment, with our logistics algorithms generating 47% of the company's total revenue growth. The transformation had exceeded even Marcus Rivera's ambitious projections. Our client base had expanded by 230%, with companies switching from competitors specifically to access our advanced inventory optimization systems. My original algorithms had evolved into a comprehensive platform that was revolutionizing supply chain management across multiple industries. But the personal transformation was even more significant than the professional success. The equity options Marcus had offered were already worth more than my entire previous annual salary, and the financial security allowed me to focus purely on innovation rather than survival. I had paid off my student loans within 4 months and purchased a beautiful townhouse in the historic district downtown. The resolution with TechFlow had unfolded exactly as Diana Walsh had predicted. Patricia's emergency board meeting had erupted into chaos when the directors discovered the intellectual property crisis and the systematic undervaluation that had created it. The board faced a choice between paying substantial licensing fees or losing their primary competitive advantage entirely. They chose licensing, but the financial strain was devastating. 25,000 monthly payments to me, combined with the loss of future innovations, had crippled TechFlow's growth potential. Within 3 months, they had lost two more major clients who migrated to Quantum Dynamics for superior technology and support. Patricia's position became untenable when the board investigation revealed her email interception scheme and the planned theft of my intellectual property through Jake Morrison's plagiarism. She was terminated for breach of fiduciary duty and faced personal liability for damages related to the IP crisis. The woman who had laughed at my modest raise request was now dealing with lawsuits and professional disgrace. Jake Morrison's termination had been swift and comprehensive. When TechFlow's legal team discovered the extent of his plagiarism efforts, they terminated his employment immediately to limit their liability exposure. His reputation in the industry was destroyed when word spread about his systematic theft of intellectual property, and he had been unable to find comparable employment elsewhere. The poetic justice was satisfying, but I took no pleasure in their personal destruction. My focus had shifted entirely to building something positive rather than dwelling on past injustices. The most rewarding aspect of my new role was mentoring young engineers, particularly women who were navigating the same challenges I had faced at TechFlow. I had established a formal mentorship program within Quantum Dynamics, teaching emerging professionals about intellectual property, protection, salary negotiation, and recognizing their true market value. Last month, I had spoken at the National Women in Technology Conference about the importance of understanding and protecting your professional worth. The response was overwhelming, with dozens of women sharing stories about similar experiences with undervaluation and exploitation. The most dangerous thing you can do, I told the audience, is accept someone else's assessment of your limitations without investigating your actual potential. Sometimes the most painful rejections redirect us toward opportunities we never imagined possible. That philosophy had become the foundation of my approach to both business and life. The licensing relationship with TechFlow continued, though their payments were becoming increasingly strained as their market position deteriorated. Industry analysts now predicted that TechFlow would need to accept acquisition within the next year, unable to compete effectively without continued innovation capabilities. Meanwhile, Quantum Dynamics was exploring initial public offering opportunities with our innovation development division positioned as a primary driver of the company's valuation. Marcus had offered me additional equity participation in recognition of my contributions to the company's growth trajectory. But beyond the financial success, I had discovered something invaluable: the satisfaction of working with people who respected and invested in my potential rather than exploiting and dismissing it. The collaborative environment at Quantum Dynamics had unleashed creativity and productivity that I never knew I possessed. My algorithms had evolved into artificial intelligence systems that could predict inventory needs with 94% accuracy, reducing waste and optimizing efficiency for clients across multiple industries. The work was challenging and meaningful in ways that transcended mere professional achievement. This morning, I received an email that perfectly encapsulated the transformation. A young software engineer named Jennifer Williams had written to thank me for my conference presentation, which had inspired her to leave an exploitative position and negotiate a 40% salary increase with a new employer. Your story gave me the courage to recognize my worth and demand appropriate compensation, she wrote. I was accepting $37,000 annually for work that my new employer valued at $52,000. Thank you for teaching me that loyalty without reciprocal respect is just exploitation. Her message reminded me of Patricia's cruel laughter and dismissive suggestion about early retirement. The irony was complete. Patricia's attempt to diminish my worth had ultimately led to discovering my true potential and building something far more valuable than anything TechFlow could have offered. The life lesson had crystallized through months of reflection and success. Your worth isn't determined by others' inability to recognize it. When people show you their true character through their treatment of your contributions, believe them completely and use that knowledge to build something better elsewhere. Sometimes the most painful rejections are actually redirections toward opportunities that exceed your wildest expectations. Patricia's laughing dismissal had been the catalyst for everything that followed: discovering my market value, protecting my intellectual property, and building a career that honored my capabilities rather than exploiting them. The morning sun continued its ascent as I prepared for another day of meaningful work with people who valued innovation and respected their team members. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus about our afternoon strategy meeting where we would discuss expanding our algorithms into international markets. The contrast with my previous life at TechFlow was stark and wonderful. Instead of being undervalued and plotted against, I was being invested in and celebrated. Instead of having my innovations stolen, I was building systems that would generate wealth and opportunity for years to come. As I reviewed my calendar for the day, I reflected on Patricia's unwitting wisdom about early retirement. She had been absolutely right that it was time for someone to retire from our professional relationship. She had simply been wrong about who would be retiring and who would be thriving. The loyal, undervalued employee she had planned to discard had become the strategic advantage that enabled her biggest competitor to dominate the market. The modest raise request she had dismissed with laughter had evolved into a licensing relationship that was draining hundreds of thousands annually from her company's resources. But most importantly, the woman she had tried to diminish had discovered her true worth and built something extraordinary from that knowledge. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's simply living so well that your success becomes its own complete vindication. Have you ever experienced a moment when someone's dismissive treatment actually redirected you toward discovering your true worth? I'd love to hear your stories about turning rejection into opportunity in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like this video to help others find the inspiration to recognize and fight for their own value. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about overcoming workplace challenges and building the career you deserve. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message about recognizing their worth, please share this video with them. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember, your value isn't determined by others' ability to see it. Keep building, keep growing, and never let anyone convince you to accept less than you deserve.